Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have a special broadcast of Mekan ve İnsan. For the first time, I will conduct the program in English, and the program will be scheduled on a free time slot. After the Feast of the Sacrifice holiday, I will be continuing the programs as usual on Mondays at 18 o'clock. Today, I am hosting Mieke Renders, the Managing Director of Trans-Europales, which is a network of cultural centers initiated by citizens and artists. Let me introduce you first, Mieke, and then we will continue with our conversation. Mieke has studied cultural anthropology at Leiden University and holds a master's degree from Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz on physical anthropology, ethnology, and musical sciences. And she holds another master's degree from the University of Antwerp on arts management. She is the managing director, as I told you, of Trans-Europales in the last 3 years. And before that, she was the project manager and owner of Lichte Kavallerie, where she was concentrating on creation, management, and coordination on tangible and intangible heritage, as well as arts and culture, of course. So Mieke, welcome again. Thanks for the opportunity that we can reach your work, your cause to the audience of Medyascope.
The honor is mine, Melis. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So you are, as an initiative, one of the oldest and most dynamic cultural networks in Europe, and you are based in Sweden, and you have 127 members in 36 countries across Europe.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
On your website, I have read your website. You say that you have three founding pillars: people, arts, and buildings, and you're repurposing abandoned buildings for arts, culture, and activism. So what is the good in that? Can you tell us, please, what you do?
Is your question related to what the network does, or what is good if a place gets repurposed?
Yes. What place gets repurposed?
Yes, of course. First of all, cities and the external zones of cities, they have a lot of industrial heritage, which is empty and abandoned because of modern techniques. People tend to build new buildings and start businesses somewhere else. So the question is, what do you do with those empty buildings in cities? Often they are left to decay and they become an ugly spot in the city. But when you give them to artists or to civil society, they can turn it into a reviving of a whole area, of a whole community, or of a whole neighborhood in a city. And I think it's good because, first of all, you let the heritage be, you let the memories of the people that used to work in that building, that came there, that did shopping there, or the grandfather worked there, you let that be, and you let that in you. You don't destroy and you don't make a new building, but you get a new vibe in that community. Because they're creative and they have a lot of ideas. They have a lot of energy to start up new things, to bring people together. So when that happens in a city, the whole area of that, the surrounding area, that it is changed in a positive way. So I think it's good. Often a neighborhood gets more clean when there are cultural activities starting. It is less dangerous. We often see where our members are working that first it used to be a place where there was drug dealing, drug using, prostitution, dirty spaces. But when they come and start to work there and bring people, the environment gets safer and cleaner. And that is a nice thing, I believe, that happens in cities.
You as an initiative, Trans-Europales was born in March 1983, and
Yes.
since then you are evolving as an initiative. I actually believe that the audience of Medyascope would like to hear about your development history, who you are, who the people are who are working with you, who funds you, how is your governance, and how do you interact and keep your work going in your member countries?
Yes. So it all started with 7 centers at the early 1980s. And those 7 centers were located in different countries. And you have to imagine a time before internet, and it was still a time where the fax machine was already a hip thing, and people used to write letters. But 7 centers from Amsterdam, Brussels, Koblenz, Zurich, France, they got together because they had a similar problem. Their governments wanted to demolish their buildings, and they wanted to do active festivals, cultural events in those buildings, but the government wanted to make a modern parking garage or a parking lot or a building for living. So they had the same problem. First of all, how do you organize activities in such empty buildings? How can you do advocating for that building, that it stays there? So how do you talk to your government? And how do you restore those buildings? So they came together in March 83 with 7 of their buildings, and they started a network. The founder was Philippe Grombeer, and he still had the vision that is alive today. So it's advocating, it's repurposing buildings, and it's making a better world and society. In the 80s, the network grew a little bit. Also in the 90s, they had their first European projects. And until it reached a point of, like, say, 70 members, and they didn't want to bring in too many members also because when they got together, those 70 people or 60, whatever, they all knew each other. They had become friends for many, many years, tens of years. And this is the big changes that I have done in the last 3 years, is to break open the network. And from being an exclusive network, hard to get in, long waiting process, etc., quorum, we made it open to being a more inclusive network without a limited of numbers of members who can enter. And why is this important? It is important because what we see is that more and more, first of all, the arts and culture world is getting more hybrid. Many people are using arts and culture. They are also a creative hub or an innovation lab. They have an innovation platform. They do urban gardening. They have a social kitchen. So it's not only arts and culture anymore. It's much broader, and it touches various aspects of society. So the world is becoming more hybrid. And what we also see is that there is also more and more creative hubs coming and raising up everywhere. And they also use arts and culture for their communities, that it's not only working next to each other, but that there is a kind of community and philosophy that exists. So civil society is trying to do a lot of things on their own. So we see an increase in those initiatives in the whole of Europe and worldwide. People are taking things in their own hands, starting up cultural activities, arts, co-working spaces, creative hubs, and they do it by themselves. So we see an increase in that. So we also see a diversity now in the membership, with going more into the creative industries than before. We see also a difference in the eastern part of Europe and the western part of Europe, where in the eastern part of Europe, creative industries are necessary to fund to support the cultural activities of that same center. They have to go hand in hand. And this is also a difference with often publicly funded institutions. They can concentrate on one thing, visual arts or opera or performing arts or dance or music, which is very good, because then they can do the research and development for those art forms. But people that get less funding or that are not so well supported from government, they have to be innovative in finding resources. So they often combine best of both worlds. And this is, I also think, a bit newer form than maybe 20, 30 years ago, where this creative industries was not so settled in yet. The governance, you can become a member of Trans-Europe Hall when you fulfill 3 criteria. The first is you have to be a non-profit organization or an NGO with a legal statute. The second one is that you have to have a multidisciplinary program open to the public. So if you're a production space, never open to the public or once a year, that would not count to become a member. You have to have regular activities open to the public. And the third one is that you have to be based in a repurposed building, a building that had another function in its life before, was abandoned, and then was taken over by arts and culture. So when you fulfill those three criteria, you go through a long process to become part of a community. You come to a conference, you have Skype, a long talk with our community manager. Then you fill in an application, you explain why you would like to become a member. Then this application is reviewed by our executive committee. And when they say, yes, this is a good application, the center gets a visit from one of the office or from the executive committee in person to have a 1 or 2 day talk, how they work, how is the democratic governance, can they make independent decisions, how is their finances structured, what is kind of programs do they have, what's the history of the building, and etc. And then when everything is approved, it will go into the General Assembly. And the General Assembly consists of everybody who is a full member. And a full member, you have to have those three criteria that I've just described. And they vote. So the new applicant, the new to-be member, they present themselves at some point during a conference. And at the end of each conference, we have a General Assembly. We sit in a big circle. And every member decides on the proposals that we have. It can be budgetary decisions or a vision and mission, or decisions about the growth of the network or whatever, but also decisions on the new members they are taking together. So actually the office has nothing to say, we propose, and the power is within the members, they decide. That's how our governance works.
Okay. Actually, as an urban planner, when I was reading your annual report, I was very interested in the projects that you are conducting right now. And of course, like the first one that I'm going to ask is going to be the cultural and creative spaces and cities. The European Commission has announced a call regarding that. And in response to that, you have formed a consortium with European Cultural Foundation, the Peer-to-Peer Foundation, and the University of Antwerp. And you are seeking to invest in the cultural and creative commons. So can you please explain more in detail about this project and what you are doing?
Yes. In society, what is often a problem, or sometimes even not seen as a problem, is that citizens don't have any policy making power. There is a big gap in between what civil society does and what the policymakers decide. And in this gap, we try to bridge this, and we are looking, can the commons, the terrain that is for everybody, like arts and culture, can it play a role into bridging the gap between what civil society does and policymakers? So in this project, we have a researcher, the University of Antwerp, who is researching on the commons and law of the commons, and how we can find policies or make policies, create new structures that enhance that in society. Excuse me. The project consists of 7 urban labs that during 2.5 years, they try to find out how they can reach common decision making on culture, on arts and culture and creative spaces. And those 7 labs, they are helped with the Peer-to-Peer Foundation and Time Lab. And they are getting support in methodologies and tools with workshops and traineeships to learn how to make common decision making. The European Cultural Foundation has done a research mapping of what kind of policies there exist on local, regional, national level to extract information also that we can use also for advancing European policies on culture and arts. So one of the things we are now trying to see is if we can prototype a House of Commons in Europe that civil society can speak with European policymakers through a kind of system with a certain methodology, etc., to make their voices heard. And we call it the House of Commons. So, but we don't have yet an idea how this would look like. Because often people, as you know, people feel powerless when they can't, when they are not heard or when they are not being taken seriously. I'm not saying that all politicians do this, but often people have this feeling. So how can we prototype a House of Commons in Europe through arts and culture and through this experimentation? The end of the project will be in February 21. And we are now in the middle of, we have done a hackathon on co-creating policies. It was online due to the COVID situation. It was at the end of June, and we had actually 14 teams to work during 2 days, and then they had a talk with the European Commission about it. And all the results are on our website of the CCSC project. And now we want to see how we can take those 14 results of those hackathon further into a next stage and prototype better.
You have another project called Developing Inclusive and Sustainable Creative Economies,
Yes.
and which is set to improve and enhance the growth, inclusivity, and sustainability of the CCIs in the EU. So could you also inform us about this project?
Yes, this is, I will do my best because it's a very complicated project. It's a research project. It's under the name of Horizon 2020. In that research project, they are looking at some tensions that are existing in the cultural world, and they have been mapping what culture and creative industries exist of, and how the whole spectrum is built upon. So they look from education to the profession to the production, etc. So the whole thing, nothing is left out. It's not only the results, like for a cultural center or a theater show. It starts with education and it goes until the audience. So they have been mapping this in the last year, what it all entails, and now they have come that there is a kind of ecosystem which is very fragile. It was interesting that the COVID situation came because one of the things that were closed immediately were the cultural centers and creative sector. It still lags behind restaurants and bars in the moment. It's become very complex, etc. And the ecosystem is very fragile. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the things that COVID laid bare in the last months. Of course, you know that. And this project is to try to find or to define how we can define the ecosystem, how can we work better with it, and maybe we will have some policy briefings on what could be done better in the future. For example, the universal basic income for artists, and so on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Yeah. Another project that you are dealing with is Shift. And to my understanding, the project aims to provide training, initiatives for cultural leaders, working together and creating paths to face global challenges such as climate change, gender equality, and inclusion of minorities. What do you do within the framework of this project? Can you also elaborate on that?
Yes, this is a project under the flag of Erasmus+, and it is meant to make a couple of outputs, tools and methodologies on those topics that you just have mentioned. Pulse is not a lead partner, but we are a partner together with other European networks. So the idea is that by the end of next year, we will have tools and methodologies on cultural leadership, also on participatory governance. That's the part of Job Pulse, because I believe our centers and we are very good in participatory governance, and they are very innovative to work with shared governance systems. Other networks will work on the sustainability in the arts. What is the awareness of ecology today? Do art centers know how to change their behavior, their ways of working towards a better sustainable world? And then there is also the gender equality and the inclusion. And all those topics should have traineeships and toolboxes on how to implement those things in your own organization. We do this from a network perspective. I mean, it's all networks working on that. It's not one cultural organization, but through our networks, we will be able to disseminate all those toolboxes to all our members. And that must be, I haven't counted, but it's over thousands, because we work with big networks in this project. So all the individual members of all those networks, they will get a toolbox on equality, on gender equality, on inclusion, sustainability, leadership, and participatory governance at the end of this project in 2021. So, which is very good. With the joint effort of networks, we can have a big trickle-down effect, hopefully, on very, very urgent issues.
Yeah. An additional project is Factories of Imagination, where you are investing in cultural change makers and try to address the fact that in European countries, many non-governmental cultural centers are under-resourced and lack the means for the professional development of their staff. What are your objectives with this project? What are you doing, or what are you going to do?
Yes, this project is actually helping the core of our network. It's to connect and support our members better. And by connecting them in Factories of Imagination, of course, we organize our conferences. We host 2 conferences per year. Normally, our next conference should be in November in Cyprus. And I say normally because that is all dependent how the COVID situation evolves. And I hope we will have many centers, by the way, from Turkey and Lebanon, etc., Israel, Palestine. That would be very, very great. It's also not that far for people from this region. So we connect them, we bring them together, but the main focus of Factorization is capacity building. It is to offer education, to offer help on leadership issues, on organizational development, on business model innovation. We offer staff exchange capacity, study visits opportunity to take part in, so our members can follow a couple of courses through what we offer. And then this should make them more resilient in their daily basis, because as you say, they are very vulnerable, they are understaffed often, underfunded, etc. So it is, when you work in a cultural center, you are challenged, you are being challenged on many levels. You work hard, you have a drive, you get a lot of disappointment because you don't find the money, it's hard to get funding, etc., etc. So we hope to give those members a bit of another perspective and help them for their own personal and organizational growth.
Mm-hmm. And one final question for this program. So you are right now in Turkey, and
yes.
Last week you were in Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken. So do you have any members from Turkey?
No, not yet. But we have. I met several people in Istanbul. One was a small center in Karaköy that's doing great work. It's called Passage, and I also wanted to visit Santanak, but they were not there. And I also visit Atelier in Beaumonte. It's a creative space, but we often work with them together. But we don't have members in Turkey, and I hope this will change. We do have a collaboration with the Hrant Dink Foundation. They were to send us a fellow as from September, but in the moment, we don't know if this fellow will be able to come or not to us, to visit us. Yes, there are more centers that I could pay a visit, but my time is short in Turkey, unfortunately, and also there is some holidays and rests.
But actually, as you have told us in the beginning of the program, to become a member, you don't have to visit them. Actually, they can apply themselves as well if they fulfill the criteria that you have counted already, right?
Yes, they can apply themselves, but the first thing we ask them to do is to come to a conference, to feel the vibe, to see their peers in other countries, to feel if they fit in well, if they want to join this community. That we are a bit careful with that, in the sense that we just don't want membership with a push of the button, but it's a real community. And often many projects arrive and happen between the members if they're actively involved. So we like to foster that. So the first thing they need to do is to come to a conference and see if it's a good fit and if they like it. So the next one is in Cyprus, not too far.
Yeah. So I understand that even without being a member, they can join the conference meetings. Yes.
Absolutely. There is no problem in that. On the contrary.
Okay, dear Mieke, thank you for joining the broadcast today and sharing valuable information about your initiative. I hope our conversation pleases Medyascope audience as well. I wish you all a safe and sound holiday and hope to see you on Monday, August the 10th. To keep updated with the latest programs of Mekan ve İnsan, follow the social media accounts of Mekan ve İnsan on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you for watching us. See you soon. Bye.